Rwanda genocide. When will we meet never again? By Alexander Donkersloot. Rwanda is a small country in Central Africa. Since the early 1800s, there have been two segregated ethnic groups in Rwanda. The Tutsis were the minority, but ruled. The Hutus, although a majority, were considered a lower class and had many liberties oppressed. In 1994, conflict because of ethnic difference escalated to catastrophic level. It was a genocide with over 800,000 Tutsi lives lost. At the same time, there was a global conflict between the United Nations and countries to resist getting involved. After the 100-day genocide was over, the compromises to achieve peace by removing ethnic barriers are continuing to evolve, and many consider the United Nations still not effective in making change to stop more recent genocides. Beginning of Rwanda. Rwanda, a small Central African country, was colonized by the Germans and then Belgians in the early 1800s. The Belgians assumed the Tutsis better positions as they decided the Tutsis was a superior race. They gave the Tutsis government positions and better treatment. The Hutus were treated as second-class citizens with poor jobs and little provisions. The two ethnic groups were very different. The Tutsi were taller and therefore considered smarter. To further separate the ethnic difference, the Belgians started a process of giving ethnic cards to every citizen, defining them as Hutu, Tutsi, or Twa. This started to create cultural alienation between classes. In 1959, there was a Rwandan revolution. This was when the Hutus ended the Tutsi monarchy. After this revolution, many Rwandan Tutsis refugees fled to Uganda and other neighboring countries. Hoping to take back Rwanda, they formed the RPF, or Rwandan Patriotic Front. In 1967, 100,000 Tutsis were killed in the revolution. In 1993, the RPF and Paul Kagame then signed a peace agreement with President Habyarimana. He was a Hutu. The RPF succeeded and brought peace for 1 year. On April 16, 1994, President Habyarimana's plane was shot down. Nobody knows for sure who shot down the plane, but the president was found dead. In 1994, major conflict finally came to Rwanda in a horrible genocide. The Hutus blamed the RPF for shooting down the president's plane and set up roadblocks. Any Tutsi discovered was killed. The radio was a key way to spread the violence. It was used to single out Tutsis' locations of where they could be hiding. The message that was broadcasted was to encourage people to kill their Tutsi neighbors.
Aujourd'hui, dimanche 19 juin 1994, et il est 16h22 à Kigali. Jeunesse des Rwandais.
Abatwumva ko nyine abantu bose bahagurukiye kurwanya inyenzi-nkotanyi n'ababwiye abasirikare bacu nibo ba mbere, mbabwira urubyiruko rwagutse kugira ngo bafashe abasirikare bacu, mbabwira inkumi, mbabwira abasore. Murabyumva rero, inyenzi ntabwo zishobora gukandira abantu bose.
Ndetse nubwo twabariraga ku ijana, ku 10%, ubwo basigara 8%, abo bantu se koko.
Through the course of the 100-day genocide, there were several key massacres. Kibuye massacre, 62,000 dead. Gikondo massacre, 110 dead. Nyarube massacre, 20,000 dead. When the Hutus started killing, all the Tutsis fled to their churches. This is why some of the worst massacres took place in and by churches. But because of some courageous people, many civilians survived. During the genocide, the RPF was growing in neighboring countries. At the end of the genocide, they took back Rwanda's capital of Kigali. When peace had been achieved, the RPF leader Paul Kagame was voted for president. He was a Tutsi. He believed in peace and and equality for all races. He removed the ethnic cards and took away the ethnic barriers. To further bind the two ethnic groups, Paul Kagame set up a constitution that supported both ethnic groups. That was not the only thing he did. He also increased education with more schools. After the genocide, many Hutus were brought to justice and either killed or were arrested for their crimes. With him as president, there was peace in Rwanda. As Wolf Sonika states, even though Rwanda is not a perfect state, it has risen from the ashes, and it has done this mostly by itself and without external nations' help. But where was the United Nations? During the Holocaust, over 7 million lives were lost. The UN said never again. In 1948, they passed the Genocide Convention. The United Nations agreed to suppress and punish people who slaughtered victims due to undesirable national, ethnic, or religious group difference. The United Nations had peacekeeping troops in Rwanda, although there is much debate on their effectiveness. At the onset of the genocide, they tried to intervene, but the UN sent just a small number of troops. At the start of the genocide, 20 troops were killed, and they were all ordered to pull back and not get directly involved. General Romeo Dallaire was at the genocide and witnessed the horrible massacres. General Dallaire was the top UN force commander in Rwanda.
In 1994, he warned the United Nations of the impending genocide,
plan of extermination was a deliberate action that we saw coming.
Even as the world became aware of the genocide events, President Clinton and the United Nations refused to call it a genocide, allowing them to not get involved.
Neighbors.
You've obviously referred to what happened here while you were president, when nearly 1 million people were slaughtered in that few-month time period as a personal failure of yours.
Ended the violence, but I think we could have cut it down, and I regret it.
The UN has learned from Rwanda and now allows greater intervention by force. But many people still believe they are not doing enough.
The United Nations was harshly criticized for its handling of the situation in Rwanda. Questions are now being raised over whether the UN has changed enough to prevent similar atrocities from happening again.
It's very hard for the UN to claim that it has solved all the problems that it faced in Rwanda. We do see new crises emerging, and again the Security Council struggles to respond. Again, UN agencies struggle to respond to these new crises, and it does sometimes feel as if we have not learned enough.
Since 1994, there has been several more atrocities that the UN has failed to prevent. Bosnia, 1995, 100,000 killed, never again. Guatemala, 1996, 166,000 killed, never again. East Timor, 1999, 196,000 killed, never again. Darfur, 2003, 300,000 killed, never again. And now Syria, 2011, 400,000 killed, never again. And in Darfur, only the United States was willing to recognize Darfur as a genocide. The United Nations and other countries refused to call it a genocide to not get politically involved. Until all countries stop letting politics control the United Nations, we will not stop these terrible atrocities. If other countries and the United Nations stops being so political and actually gets involved, many lives could be saved and the world would be a better place. No truer are the words from a Rwanda genocide survivor, Immaculée Ilibagiza. She says, "What happened in Rwanda happened to us all. Humanity was wounded by the genocide, and humanity will still get wounded every genocide at a time. Although compromises continue to help and Rwanda continues to heal, with compromises with the United Nations has far to go before we see a genocide-free world."